everyone, this is Brian from Chess Fanatic. I've created this channel to try and promote chess. I'm going to go over openings, traps, recent games, and famous games to try and promote chess. I'm going to start this channel by going over an opening that I really love to play called the Queen's Gambit. Now the Queen's Gambit starts with d4. If you're wondering whether you should play d4 or if you should play e4, you should probably think about what type of player you are. E4 is going to give you more of attacking games with attacking chances because you create a pawn in the center that's unprotected, as well as allow a diagonal to your f7 square, which is usually very weak. So if you're an attacking player, I'd recommend e4. If you're more of a passive player that likes solid openings, I'd go d4. d4 creates a pawn in the center that is already protected, only opens up your bishop. Well, in e4 it opens up your bishop and your queen. But you're going to get more passive, sort of boring games, but extremely solid. Computers play this opening, grandmasters play it. It's just an extremely solid opening. No weaknesses. If you're going to play d4, I would recommend learning a little bit of theory and a couple of openings, though. One of which is the Slav, which is c4, c6. This, I think, is usually easy to play against. However, it may be good to invest some time just learning how to play against it. Then we have the Nimzo Indian, which is c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4. This can be a little bit tough to play against, as black can contest your center easily. So you probably want to invest some time learning how to play against this opening as well. And finally, the King's Indian can be tough to play against. So if you're going to play d4, just learn probably those openings and you should be fine. But let's go into the opening now. So the Queen's Gambit starts after d5. D5 is probably the second most common move after knight f6. So it's still extremely common, and you're going to get this position a lot in games if you play d4, in which you go c4 now. Now, you want to challenge this pawn, and the best way to do that is usually to send a pawn attacking it. Now this pawn has to decide whether to take this pawn that appears like it's hanging, which it kind of is because it's the Queen's Gambit. However, it's not really a gambit, as I'll show you later. It's hard to keep this pawn. Or they can decide to go e6. E6 creates the Queen's Gambit declined, in which you simply go knight c3, knight f6. Notice how this pawn remains kind of hanging, but they don't want to take it because they lose center influence. Bishop g5, and this is an extremely common variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. You might want to learn a little bit of Queen's Gambit declined theory. I think it's usually pretty simple to play against, but there can be some traps. It's pretty rare though. Probably just invest a little bit of time. Then they can go c6, as I said, was the Slav. You should probably look at that a little bit. Usually they don't take. However, if they take, they can usually hang on to this pawn. But, well, in some variations they can hang on to this pawn, but you get center influence. Anyways, after c4, if they decide to take, now you can go e3. You can also decide to go knight f3 or e4, which basically says, okay, you can take my pawn, I'm going to have center influence. But I think e3 is most solid. It protects one of your center pawns that has a lot of center influence, as well as attacks this pawn with your bishop. They have two options here. They can either continue development, a knight, or e6, which basically puts a little bit of pressure on the center, in which you can take this, and this will lead to relatively equal positions. However, if you compare the two positions, white has a nice bishop on this diagonal. You might think about d5 pushes eventually. This bishop is a little bit blocked in by e6, and white has center influence. This pawn right here is very, very strong. So I like this position for white, but it's still relatively equal. Okay, so after b5, b5 says, okay, I'm gonna hang on to this pawn. If I can keep this pawn, then it doesn't matter if I have center influence or not, because I'm gonna be up a pawn. I don't think b5 is very strong because usually they do not keep this pawn, and now they're just spending time on the side of the board, which you don't want to do. You want to spend time on the center of the board, creating center influence. Now you can go a4. You challenge this pawn, just how you challenged the pawn when you went c4. Now they can decide to either protect it. Actually, that's basically their only option. If they take this, this is much better for white. You can also take here with check. So their only option really is to, I guess, lose a pawn. Or to allow this pawn to fall. If they go c6, you go a takes b, c takes b, and now you're winning a piece. There's no way to protect this rook. The only way is to go knight f6, queen takes knight, bishop d7, and queen a6. You're simply up a piece. Now if they decide to go a6 instead of c6, this also loses a pawn. Because after a takes b, they cannot take back, or they lose their rook. So basically, you're going to win back this pawn if they decide to take it. Actually, there is a line with bishop e6, but I think this is just extremely bad. This blocks the e-pawn. This bishop is just kind of awkward, and they're just spending too much time trying to keep this pawn. So you're probably going to win it back. You could also go knight a3. This is just better for white. So if they try and keep the pawn, you're going to get a better position. So that's basically the Queen's Gambit. I really recommend this opening. It's a solid opening. It's really great against higher rated opponents because it creates more of an equal position, but it's slightly better for white. It's pretty easy to play, other than those few openings that I recommend you should learn the theory. Actually, there's a really good opening book I could provide in the description that just goes over all those openings and others. So please like and subscribe, and hope you enjoyed this video.